Okay, so I was posed I don't know, I guess a question. Yeah, let's call it a question not too long ago. And I was discussing 3D printers, oddly enough, and the precision, of one model to the next. There's quite a few different models out there. I happen to really like mine. Mine are an Anet, kind of a cheapy off-brand, but man, when it comes to precision, I really like the way mine are built. So I was in this discussion, and the dude I'm talking to says to me, he says, well, these are better. I said, well, no, they're not. What makes them better? He said, well, they're better because they're more precise. And I said, well, actually, no, they're not more precise. The old A-nets that I have are more precise. This individual says, well, how do you know that it's more precise? And I said, well, I'm a senior journeyman tool and die maker, and quite frankly, it's my job to know which one's more precise. But then I stopped and thought, how does old Carter know that I know what precise is? He's never come to work with me. He's never watched what I do. Much I hate to say it, not quite old enough to completely understand what precision really is. So I decided, I got my new A-net. I just purchased another one, this number 3, and it's got all the latest upgrades on it. I really like it. But I figured, well, I'm assembling this because they are a do-it-yourself kit. Let's go through what precision really is and why I think I know what precision is. Now, the first thing we got to do is define precision, because there are 1,000,001 grades of precision. I'm in the automotive industry. That's pretty much all I've worked with. I work with some medical stuff, and I know a little bit about the precision held with stuff that goes into space. Never got to make anything that went into space, but I do know about the precision. Aircraft precision, I've been around that too. But what we're talking about is automotive precision. Generally, we work in thousandths of an inch. I'm too old to be dealing with that metric system. I might throw some of them in there just so you metric guys will see what I'm talking about. But the bottom line is, I generally work in 10,000ths of an inch. So what is a thousandth of an inch? Well, you take an inch, you divide it into 1,000 even pieces, 1,000 of them, all the same, and one of those is 1,000th of an inch. Now, that's great, but what does that mean? Well, if you take a piece of paper out of your printer and you were to check how thick it is, that piece of paper is going to be 4 of those little 1,000ths of an inch. It'd be 4,000ths of an inch. So this is where we're talking. Now, at work, most of the time, I got to take one of them 1,000ths, and then I got to divide that 10 times. And then I got to hold what I'm doing to within one of those. And that's a 10,000th of an inch, or a tenth, as we refer to it at work. And that's not to say I get plus or minus a tenth. That means, Rodney, we want it here, and you got a half of a tenth on either side to be in, for it to be good. So when we're talking precision, and by no means is this aircraft precision. Well, those kind of numbers are. I generally work within 1,000th of an inch, but I like to try to hold tenths because I've built gauges and whatnot. Irrelevant. Aircrafts are more precise. Things that go out into space are even more precise than that. So, yes, there is a lot more precision, but this is what I do and why I consider myself to know the difference between a precise 3D printer and one that's not so precise. Okay, so what I'm going to show you here is this is the base, and what this base is a old pool table. It was a 3-piece slate, and anybody that's ever played pool knows that a slate pool top is pretty flat. So now we're going to talk about flatness, because there's a lot of different precisions. You know how thick something is, how parallel it is, does it maintain that thickness all the way across? How flat is it? Flatness can be a tough one. So the flattest thing that I personally own is this right here. It's a piece of granite made by Dual. we're going to call this Rick and Morty flat. Okay, that's how flat this is. This thing is Rick and Morty flat. It's really flat. The reason you would need something that flat is because of these. And these are blocks we use to measure stuff, okay? This is 450 of those 1/1000ths of an inch. This one is 400. These are pretty flat on two surfaces, the surfaces where the measuring actually takes place. So there's this thing about flat stuff. It does what we call rings together. See how them are stuck together? That has nothing to do with magnetism. That has nothing to do with grease or oil in between them. As a matter of fact, when we're measuring in precise, we want them so clean that there's nothing on them. And what they say is that these things are so flat that there actually is a little bit of magnetism, in that the molecules are allowed to get close enough to each other, or the atoms, that they are actually a little bit of draw, and they actually kind of stick together a little bit. Nobody really seems to know for sure, though. It could be just that you squeezed all the air out of there and you're getting a vacuum. I don't know. But what this block is for is if your gauge blocks don't want to ring together anymore, this is just a little hone for them. So consequently, this has got to be super flat. The next flattest thing I got is this thing right here. This is a surface plate. Again, it's made out of granite. You can actually get this clean enough. I can actually ring them together. Or I can trap air in between them and slide it around like a little puck. The minute I squeeze that air out, they ring together. So this is flatness. This is what we're using for a flatness scale. Oh, and this does have a, it's been certified. Here, just a second. I don't want you to miss out on this. Maybe think I'm cheating here. Okay, right here's the certifications. And there's a whole bunch of zeros on there. I think there's 4 of them, and then 6, 9, and generally that's over a given distance, but it's flat to that. It's certified flat to that degree. Okay. So now we got our surface plate. And the next flattest thing I got is a machinist level. These aren't like your Home Depot or your Menards or your Lowe's level. Nothing like it. These things are super accurate, and they're accurate over a, what's it say? 1 division is 5/10 or a half of 1/1000th. Okay, over a foot. And when you start talking about these kind of levels, it's how level am I over a given distance. So this is, for obvious reasons then, this bottom surface needs to be really flat. And if I set it on my granite, scrub it around a little bit, and try to rock it, it doesn't. So it's sitting pretty flat. So I know my granite's flat, I know my level's flat because my level is sitting on my granite, and it doesn't rock, and believe it or not, that is a test for how flat something is. Set it on something known to be flat, and that is actually a term. Is that known to be flat? Is that known to be calibrated? So now that we have a surface plate known to be flat, we got a level that really sits down there good, doesn't rock, doesn't move, won't even flex when you do the corners. We're going to call this level pretty darn flat. But not necessarily known to be flat, because we don't have any numbers on how flat it really is. So it's not known to be flat, it's just really flat. What we're going to do next is we're going to use this level to see how flat this surface on this entire piece of slate is, this 3-piece slate I have. And this is what we're going to build the 3D printer on, and we're actually going to use an indicator to make sure that this 3D printer is square with itself, you know, is the X and Y axis moving square with the Z axis, the whole shebang. We're going to look at all of it. Okay, that's flatness. Okay, we've gotten all the stuff off the slate back here, and ready to check it for flatness. We're going to get into actually using the mics, micrometers. That's what we use to measure thickness. And that's all going to play into part of seeing how flat this is. We'll show you. So let's get zoomed in here. There we are. And we've got the level, of course. And we can slide this around on here, and it's not level. We're not worried about it being level. We're worried about it being flat. So the way we do this is we set this level, flat surface, on here, and we just kind of move it around, and we try to see if it rocks or humps. And it doesn't. It seems to be sitting down there pretty good. I can check quite a few out here. See here we got a little bit. It's not perfect. Right there, see we got some spin right there, so we know that we're high in the middle. I can slide that back and never really lose all of the spin. We got a spot here that doesn't spin at all, seems to be sitting on the outsides. So then there comes that question, you know. You can tell when the middle's humped up because she'll spin a little bit, and if I push down I can feel the other end rock up ever so slightly. We can measure that, but I'm not gonna. So then how do we know that it's not caved in like this, and that we're not just sitting on the outside edges, and that the middle isn't hollowed out? Because, you know, that would be easy to do if you're only sitting on the outside edges. You wouldn't be able to push on it and rock it, but there'd be a hollow spot in the middle. So this is how we check that. Oddly enough, some of the thinnest things that you can get your hands on are aluminum foil. Now, back in the day, when they wrapped candy bars in aluminum foil, Nestle Crunch, or a regular Nestle bar, had the thinnest aluminum foil that you could get your hands on readily. And it was a half of 1/1000th of an inch, or 5/10 of 1/1000th. So since you can't get them Nestle bars anymore with that really thin aluminum foil on them, I picked up a few different candies that had aluminum foil wrappers on them. And we got one here, and what we're going to look at here, these are micrometers. For anybody that doesn't know, hasn't seen them before, this is how you measure how thick something is. And these go up to 1 inch, and then you have another set for 1 inch to 2 inches and so on. But these are 1 inch ones, and you just kind of put them on there, and these are really nice Brown & Sharps. They have a friction stop on them so that you tighten them down to the exact same amount every time. And that barrel spins a little bit, and we'll open them and close them a couple times. And then we can read on them where we're at. See if I can get that to focus. Well, I had her focusing earlier, now I can't seem to. There we go. You can see that the line here is lined up with the 2. Well, I would say that these are 2/1000ths thick, that this piece of aluminum foil is 2/1000ths of an inch thick. That's kind of thick, way thicker than what we want for what we're doing. Now earlier, as I was playing with this, I was pretty sure I had this down to about 7/10. There we go, that looks better. So because of all the crinkles and whatnot in it, sometimes you might be measuring them. So if I get a spot here and I iron it out with my fingers real good, and I can feel it, how flat it's getting. Open them up, stick them back in there. Tighten them down on the thimble ever so slightly. Hit the lock, and let's see where we're at. As you can see now, we're between the 0 and the 1. A little over halfway. I would call that 6/10, but with these mics actually read in tenths. So if we turn these up, and I open them right up, let me get the lock off, and I open them right up, you can see these lines across the top here, across the barrel here, with the numbers on them. These are your tenths. What these do is divide up the increment between 0 and 1, 1 and 2, whatnot, so on and so forth. And the way you read this, see if we can get her to focus again here, is you look up here and you see which line lines up the best with the numbers down here. And that's how you decide how many tenths it is. So we're going to go back down on this. And this is going to be hard to see because we're down all the way and them lines kind of get hid, but I think it'll still show. This camera seems to be doing a good enough job to show us about where we're at. Okay, so now we're back down on them. Get her to focus back in on that. And again, you can see we're between the 0 and the 1. If we come around and look at these, boy, it's really going to be hard to see. You can see that the 6 seems to line up about the best. So this would be 6/10 of a thousandth thick. That's pretty thin. Like I say, the old Nestle paper, it was down around 5/10. It was a half a thou thick. This is off a Hershey Kiss. Make sure you can see what's going on here. This is off a Hershey Kiss. This I found to be just a shade thinner than the whatever that other one was. It was some kind of candy, I'm not sure. Let's get in here and measure this one. Go down. We're going to catch that friction stop. Make sure we're on it. Hit the lock. And let's see where we're at. Again, we're definitely between 0 and 1, and you can see this one's even a little closer to the 0. This might be miking out at half. So if we eyeball this, and look for the one that lines up the best. Man, I'm going to call that a 4. 4/10. That's pretty thin. As far as the world and what you can get your hands on that's thin, you ain't going to get something much thinner than that out in the world. There is stuff that's thinner, obviously, but that you can readily get a hold of. Let's check this, because this is the actual piece we're going to be using. Boy, that looks pretty close to a half to me. As we scrub across there, we're somewhere around 5/6. Reading the numbers this small, being able to measure it is part of the whole game. Okay, so now about that hump in the middle. We can't tell that thing is down perfectly tight. Now, there's ways to do it, but we're not going to get into that. So what we can do, though, is if you can find a spot that was caved in, we'll set this right under here. Set it down on it. It's got a hold of it. Okay? So that tells us that there's no, at least within a half a thousandth, there's no hump in the middle. No divot, whatever you want to call it. And we can actually check the ends the same way. Like right here, I know it rocks a little. I can slide that little thin piece under there. I can push down on this end and I can pull it right out. Okay, let's go a little deeper. I can push down on this and again it slides right out. So we know that there's a little bit of a rise in this right here. How much? Yeah, we could find out exactly by getting some shim stock and figuring out which one goes in there and which one. See, here we go. We can get under it again. So there is a little bit of a hump there. We go this way and things really get flat. We got a hold of it. I can't pull it out. Let's check her in the middle. Yeah, there we go. See, we got a little bit, not much. We got a little bit of gap right there. So we know that it's kind of curved this way and kind of curved this way. Pretty darn close considering we're using 0.6 of a thousand to check it with. That's pretty darn close. Way close enough for what we're doing. So that's measuring and that's flatness. Oh, and then just for the record, let's get that. Just for the fun of it, here's that piece of computer paper, okay, out of your printer, computer paper, printer paper, whatever you want to call it. And we're going to come down and tighten down on that, hit the friction, give it a couple spins, make sure it's there. Oh, that's a little too tight. And I should be able to just slide that out of there. Okay. Zoom in on that. And as you can see, we're pretty much right dead on the 4. Whoops. So that piece of paper is 4 thousandths thick. This is a piece of paper off from a Post-it note pad. Well, let's see where that's at, just for the fun of it, because I can tell this is thicker just by feeling it. Down, lock it up, pull it out. Had a little trouble with my camera there, a few little technical difficulties, so let's go back over on that Post-it note, and we'll measure that one more time just for the fun of it. First I got to have the Post-it note. Okay, so now we're going to measure this. See where this comes out. Here down on the friction. My friction needs a little lubrication. Feels good. So let's see where we're at. And as you can see, the old Post-it note's about 5 thousandths of an inch thick. Okay, so that's where we are for that, and I think we're ready to move on. Okay, not gonna focus a whole lot on the actual build of this Anet machine. Instructions are spectacular. Really get right down to the nitty-gritty and show you how to do it. I'm going to rapid right through it up to the points where we're going to be leveling things, because that's what this is all about, is getting things straight and square, not so much the build. Okay. Okay, we gonna have to slow down here for a minute so we can take a look at these linear bearings. Linear bearings is something you use when you need something to run pretty precisely in a straight line. They used a lot in gauges and stuff like that. And the reason we stopped to measure them is on my old Anet, I run into a little problem as I measured Mike through these rods, and I could find a difference of 2 to 3 thousandths in the diameter from one rod to the next in some cases. That's a little more than I like to see in a linear bearing. I ended up buying myself some what they call ground precision rod, which has a little more accuracy to it, and ended up running them. So anyway, another thing I really like about these Anets is they run these linear bearings in X, Y, and Z axes. I find that to be a lot better than these wheels and extruded aluminum deal that some of these other ones want to run in. So anyway, that's why we slowed down here to take a good look at these linear bearings, make sure everything's on the up and up. Right here, as I tighten up them two threaded rods that kind of hold the whole thing together in the Y direction, I want to make sure everything's sitting down good and flat on the surface that we took all the time to make sure it was flat, because that's going to play a big part on down the road, because we're going to be using that surface to determine that the Y rods that we just put in with our linear bearings there are parallel to the table, because, well, you know, everything's got to be straight and parallel.